Hey y'all, it's John Trent from Bounding into Comics. I've got a pretty big MCU rumor for you today regarding Emily Blunt. But before we get into it, I'd like to ask if you could please hit the subscribe button. It helps us ensure more people can see our videos and helps us combat Google and YouTube manipulating their algorithms to favor major corporations at the expense of the small guy. So hit that subscribe button and help more folks see this video. Appreciate that. Thank you. So let's get into this rumor. Charles Murphy of Murphy's Multiverse reports that Emily Blunt of Edge of Tomorrow and A Quiet Place fame took a meeting with Marvel Studios while filming the upcoming Disney flick Jungle Cruise. Murphy makes it clear in his report he doesn't know what the meeting was about and only indicates that she had the meeting. So this is what he wrote, quote, "While filming the Disney picture Jungle Cruise, Emily Blunt met with Marvel Studios about a role in an upcoming film. That's it. That is all I heard. Don't know if she signed or passed on yet another Marvel Studios role. I don't even know what the role they discussed was." End quote. However, Murphy does speculate, given the recent report from the Illuminati, that Blunt could be playing Clea in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. So the Illuminati reported on a casting call that they believe hints that Clea could be showing up in the film. Here's what their report said regarding the specifics of that casting call. Quote, "The casting call for Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness indicates that the film will contain an undisclosed female lead at the center of the narrative. The age range is from late 20s to early 40s, which would put her around the same age as her potential romantic paramour, Stephen Strange." The report continued, "She's also noted as needing to have leading lady qualities, which would seem to suggest she'll be put up against Strange in a major role." End quote. So Murphy took that and speculated that Blunt could actually have been having a meeting about playing Clea. So this is what he says. "Blunt is 36 years old and one of the premier female action stars in Hollywood. She not only fits the age requirement, there's a lot of actors that fit the age requirement, so I'm not going to get hung up on that." And then he continues, "She has all the chops and a long list of hits to be the new leading lady, and certainly someone who can go on screen with Benedict Cumberbatch and be seen as his contemporary. She can do more than that. She can go toe-to-toe with Cumberbatch and knock his Stephen Strange down a few pegs when the time is right." I'm going to have to agree with Murphy on that. If you haven't seen Edge of Tomorrow, Blunt's Rita does exactly what he describes to Tom Cruise's Cage. Tom Cruise, the biggest Hollywood star there is. That I don't even think that's an opinion. That's pretty much a fact. The guy is superstar celebrity status. And Blunt proved in that film that she can stand toe-to-toe with him. In fact, she's actually the one who has to train Cruise's Cage. Her character trains Cruise's Cage. She holds her own on screen against him and isn't afraid to knock him down a peg and then bring him back up as any good mentor and trainer should do. And she did that wonderfully. It was a great film. I highly recommend that you watch that if you haven't seen it already. And then we've also seen that Blunt can do a lot of other things. If you saw A Quiet Place, I'm not the biggest fan of A Quiet Place. But I thought her acting was superb in it. We got to see a different side of Emily Blunt in there. You got to see the fury of a mother bear protecting her cubs, but also the dread and fear as the Quiet Place monsters are trying to hunt her down in her own home, and she's there trying to protect her newborn baby. So you got to see that. And if Multiverse of Madness is going to keep the horror element that has been kind of somewhat promised by Feige and company, we saw that she has the chops to do horror stuff as well. And then obviously she's leading lady material as she showed in both Edge of Tomorrow and A Quiet Place. But while Murphy speculates that Blunt could be Clea in Doctor Strange, Blunt's name has been around the MCU for quite some time. She actually turned down the role of Black Widow in Iron Man 2 due to an apparent scheduling conflict with Fox's Gulliver's Travels. Collider reported at the time Fox actually exercised a clause in her contract preventing her from taking the role. She also turned down the role of Peggy Carter in Captain America: First Avenger. More recently, fans have been expressing their desire to have Emily Blunt and her Emily Blunt play Sue Storm and her husband John Krasinski play Reed Richards of the Fantastic Four. There's been plenty of fan art circulating throughout the internet of both of those actors as those characters. Myself, I think she would probably be a better Sue Storm than Clea, especially the kind of family dynamic that we saw in A Quiet Place. I think that plays much more to Sue Storm than Clea, but I will be honest, I'm not extremely well versed on Clea lore, but she does seem to be more of the Sue Storm kind of would fit her more than Clea, and that's just my opinion. But I do have an idea that's kind of way out of left field, and I think my co-host on Bounding Live, which we do every Wednesday, Philip Pratt, would find this really interesting, and as well would Don Edmonds. So this is kind of based off of like what Feige's been doing. He's been kind of taking these newer Marvel comics, and that's what they're looking like they're going to be doing with Phase 4. The Eternals being the exception, and that's based off of Kirby's 1970s comic book. But a lot of the new stuff we're seeing, Miss Marvel, and rumors about Young Avengers, even with what's going on with WandaVision, with Wiccan and Speed potentially showing up there. It looks like they're pulling from a lot of like newer comics, and obviously this would probably be one of the newer comics that they would pull from, but obviously wouldn't be as new, given that this probably would be much further down the road. But she could play the X-Men character Moira McTaggart, so you might recognize that name. She showed up in X-Men First Class. She was kind of a love interest of Charles Xavier by the end of the film, but in the beginning she was like I think she was an FBI or CIA agent, and she's tasked with like finding out about mutants, and then helps Charles Xavier and their first class of X-Men prevent World War III, which takes place during the Cuban Missile Crisis, which the movie takes place surrounding the Cuban Missile Crisis. So that's how you might know Moira McTaggart. But more recently in Marvel Comics, especially recently in Jonathan Hickman's recent House of X and Powers of X storyline, Moira McTaggart plays a key role, and she's actually revealed to be a mutant. She's not a human anymore. She is a mutant, and she has this ability to relive her life 10 or 11 times. It's not clear. That's kind of the range that we got. But what happens is in her first life, she lives kind of like a normal life. Has a couple kids. They have a house, and she just kind of lives to old age and enjoys her family. But then, unbeknownst to her, she was a mutant, and her mutant power, she realizes her mutant power is activated when she wakes up in the womb of her mother, and then she's kind of she gets to live her life again, and then she makes different choices, and then she does that for 10 or 11 times, where she's making different choices, and those choices affect kind of how the world turns out. And it involves like all kinds of different mutants and Marvel history, whether it's with Magneto or Apocalypse. So she basically becomes like the main driving force of what's happening in like the X-Men world, and even in the Marvel universe right now, in Marvel Comics, especially when it comes to the X-Men books, which are basically taking over all of Marvel Comics' line. But that would be really interesting to see, I think, and I think she could play that character really well. It's based like even the way the character's already built, with living 10 or 11 lives. You have at least 10 or 11 movies that you could do. That's not even including spin-offs if you want in those each of those lives. So you obviously could build like a trilogy on each life. If you wanted to, and in those lives she does different things. Like I said, sometimes she's pursuing Magneto as a romantic interest in order to try and ensure that mutants survive, and in others she's pursuing Apocalypse. Then you also have like her going after Charles Xavier. Sometimes she's decides to train herself as an assassin and starts going around killing the Trask family in order to try and eliminate the idea that the way humans could eliminate the mutants. So there's lots of different things that they could do there, and I think that could actually be really interesting. So if that was something they were talking about, that could be really cool, and it would be very different from kind of what we've seen from Fox's X-Men as well. But that's kind of what I'm thinking. That's my thoughts. What do you think? Do you think Blunt would make a good Clea? Would you want to see her play Clea? Are there any other characters you would want to see her play? What would your top choices be? Let me know. Leave a comment below. And I want to thank you for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please hit those subscribe and like buttons. My name is John Trent, and you have been watching Bounding into Comics. Until next time.